Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, October 10th, 2025. This week's Chairman's Report is guest written by Jade Walle. Jade is a practicing CPA who has been on the Americans for Fair Taxation Board of Directors. The Fair Tax and America's Youth. As the nation and all champions of free speech, liberty, morality, and religious liberty mourn Charlie Kirk, one aspect of Charlie's legacy that I didn't fully comprehend until now is his larger-than-life impact on our American youth. Charlie helped trigger the recently too often lost human skill of critical thinking and self-examination. Charlie also gently and respectfully supported and encouraged the nation's youth with his Socratic questioning technique as young adults discovered who they were as individuals and deciphered the true logic, or lack thereof, of various policies, positions, and issues. Charlie's impact on not just our youth, but on the nation as a whole cannot be overstated. His bright, shining light founded in his Christian faith had and will continue to have an outsized impact on young adults and others for years to come. He'll be missed for decades, perhaps centuries to come. Now, I saw an interview Charlie gave where he said that youth are idealistic and they want a vision. Now, given Charlie Kirk's impact on American youth, it led me to reflect on how American youth consistently respond with eagerness and excitement when I explain the FAIRtax proposal to them in various settings. Now, the FAIRtax has something for everyone. It's a libertarian's dream, as it gets the U.S. government out of your personal affairs by eliminating the need to give the government all the intimate details of your personal finances on a tax return. Under the income tax, the government collects more personal financial data about you than sometimes even your spouse or children have. It's also a dream for those more liberally inclined, as it provides much greater purchasing power for those who earn near the bottom of the lowest income brackets. It also creates a mechanism to tax existing wealth, the generational wealth that, when eventually spent, will be fully taxed. The FAIRtax prebate also creates a much more progressive taxation system relative to the income payroll tax, meaning the working poor will pay less in tax under the FAIRtax than they currently do. Conservatives love the FAIRtax as well. It gives people an unprecedented level of freedom to decide how much tax they pay and when they pay it. There's less government intrusion into our personal lives, lower overall tax rates, and an over 90% reduction in illegal tax evasion. Plus, by making the prebate available only to legal U.S. residents, the FAIRtax encourages legal immigration and discourages illegal immigration. Those residing in the U.S. illegally will pay their full federal tax burden as they consume. On June 18, 2025, a newly released national survey conducted by Quantus Insights of 1,200 registered voters revealed a bipartisan majority, including Republicans at 69%, Democrats at 52%, and Independents at 51%, all support the idea of replacing the current income tax system with a national sales tax. Now, overall, 50% of voters surveyed support getting rid of the IRS. However, among voters under the age of 30, that jumps up to a whopping 60% who want to see the IRS thrown on the scrap heap of history. That is a monumentally high dissatisfaction rate with the IRS among our nation's youth. Why do U.S. youth despise the IRS and generally react positively to the FAIRtax proposal? Well, first, the youth I speak with detest having to file income tax returns. They don't like either having to pay someone to complete their federal and state income tax returns or having to purchase tax preparation software to ensure that their tax forms are filled out correctly. American youth also absolutely despise having money withheld from their paychecks. We joke about teenagers coming home in tears, having received their first paycheck, and demanding to know who this FICA guy is and why he's taking such a big chunk out of my small paycheck. Now, the aforementioned poll sheds further light on the matter. The June 18, 2025 release noted, perhaps the most resonant element of the FAIRtax framework is its simplicity. The idea of keeping 100% of your paycheck stood out across all demographics, with nearly 60% of voters identifying it as their most appealing feature. For many, the emotional and financial appeal of retaining their full earnings outweighed concerns about the structure itself. Another aspect of the FAIRtax that youth find appealing is it will arguably be the greenest bill in American history. The FAIRtax is applied only to the retail purchase of new goods and services. Pre-owned items are not taxed. This means that new burgeoning industries selling gently used items will begin to surface to legally sell items free of the FAIRtax. The FAIRtax inherently and elegantly encourages increased recycling and reusing of items such as clothes, equipment, furniture, tools, electronics, and many other products. Economically minded youth also love the stimulating effect that the FAIRtax is predicted to bring to the economy. It'll help make the U.S. much more competitive on the global scene, and that means better paying jobs for our youth, and that in turn will help make housing more affordable. Lastly, many youths I speak to, including my own children, are much too busy with their lives, school, new careers, love life, etc. Being held responsible for over 80,000 pages of tax law, IRS tax code, and other regulations is antithetical to their high-speed and instantaneous way of life. I believe Charlie would have loved the FAIRtax because it represents a return of power from an abusive government to the people. He would have loved it because it encourages productivity and hard work compared to the apathy that the income tax engenders. Let's all commit to bringing the FAIRtax to a vote in Congress and honoring Charlie's memory, at least in a small way, by making America much freer than it is today. Let's return the billions of hours stolen away from families each year planning and preparing their income taxes. As Charlie so eloquently said, youth are idealistic. They want a vision, and this is the reason so many youth are innately drawn to and can get behind the FAIRtax movement. In conclusion, Jade's article clearly illustrates why it's time to take power away from the D.C. elites and almost all the politicians and their minions who profit from the complexity of the income payroll tax system, while the rest of us have to pay for their greed. It's time we realize that these people protecting against any attempt to eliminate the income payroll tax system want us to be struggling and forced to depend on begging for their largesse. Now, many of you have labored tirelessly for freedom from the federal income tax and the IRS. You deserve a great deal of credit for your efforts to educate the American people on the need to fund the American government in a way that's good for America and that returns freedom to the American people. It's imperative, though, that we don't replace the current income tax and the IRS with an alternative system that can still be manipulated by the ruling elite. We must let Congress and the President know that the best way to replace the income tax and the IRS is with the FAIRtax. Now, make no mistake about it. The FAIRtax is a grave threat to the ruling elites. It will strip them of their power and their ability to control us through the tax system. Their opposition to the FAIRtax will be fierce and unrelenting, and don't think for an instant they won't use half-truths, deception, and downright lies in their desperate attempt to hang on to their power. However, with the support of this president, we can finally eliminate the income tax and the IRS. Now, of course, the best course of action is not only to repeal the income tax and abolish the IRS, but to repeal the 16th Amendment as well, so that no future administration can ever shackle the American people with an income tax again. We must come together and ensure that real tax reform, the FAIRtax, is not subverted by the elites in D.C. This will take the diligent efforts from all of us. We need your financial assistance, and we need your grassroots assistance. Now, if you have contacts that will allow us to get more information about the FAIRtax to President Trump, please let us know. Also, please email us at info@fairtax.org, and we'll give you some options on how you can best help us. At a minimum, please call your congressional representative and ask if he or she supports the FAIRtax. If so, thank him or her for their support and suggest they become a co-sponsor of H.R. 25 if they're not one already. If not, ask why not. Now, if your representative claims to be unfamiliar with the FAIRtax, offer to have someone come to their office and explain it to them. The solution: pass the FAIRtax. Now, why would D.C. pass the FAIRtax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system in the IRS along with it? Help bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or actually investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for Fair Taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to FAIRtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the Fair Tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.